Hey guys, welcome back to Project Bodybuilding, and today I have a very special episode of my Road to the Arnold Classic series. We are officially less than 1 week out, so it's time to get to those big matchups. We all know that there are 3 major names to watch going into this contest, the only current top 5 Olympians on the list. Samson Dauda, Mr. Olympia currently, Derek Lunsford, Mr. Olympia formerly, and Andrew Jacked, who might be Mr. Olympia soon. Today we have some apples and oranges because out of those 3 names we will be comparing Andrew Jacked at his best versus Derek Lunsford at his best as well. They did just face off at the Mr. Olympia, and sure, Derek did prevail. He was 3rd while Andrew was 5th, but we know that that wasn't Andrew at his very best. Andrew's best today is obviously when he did the 2024 Texas Pro, and he did not replicate that at the Olympia. But what if he did? Derek will be using his 2024 Mr. Olympia version as that is by far his best version to date. I will definitely die on this hill, so we actually have a rematch on our hands. Can Derek Lunsford fend off Andrew Jacked at this year's Arnold Classic? Is a top 2 spot really on lock for Derek at this event, like so many people say it is? Let's compare the best versions of these 2 amazing competitors to find out. Remember, if you guys like these types of videos and want to see more of the series and stay up to date all the way up to my live coverage on show day, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more. Now, although this is one of the main matchups heading into this year's Arnold, a few poses simply don't need that much explanation. The front double biceps is one of those 3 shots that Andrew pretty much always wins, and yes, he is winning here too. However, we do need to pay attention to the margins here, even though these are pretty solid poses for Andrew. Thankfully, in my comparisons on my channel, I use a margin of victory point system. If a competitor wins a pose by a small, solid, or dominant margin, he will get 1, 2, or 3 points on the scorecard respectively. Andrew's going to shore up 3 points against most people, but not Derek, mainly for Derek's incredible upper body. Andrew is still on the cusp of a 3-pointer though. He has the better legs, and with that the much better upper-lower balance, and his upper half is insane too. Look at how full his chest is, even in this shot. His lats are also very thick, and he's beating Derek in the arms. However, I think Derek's torso shape is actually better than Andrew's, and his upper body elements are not bad at this point, although he does get beat. I think Derek's pose, the upper half, really is just wild looking enough to just barely limit Andrew's margin here, but he's still going to get a very strong 2-point win to start this comparison out. Next, we have the front lat spread, the second of the 3 Andrew poses I mentioned. Now, truth be told, I don't think Derek is too bad here. I know that'll be an unpopular opinion, but I don't think he's the worst. But this comparison will have me doing a lot of Derek defending, but that's okay. It's a dirty job and someone's got to do it. However, Derek is very mediocre while Andrew is fantastic. Probably the best in the world in this shot right now. And we can easily see why. He pretty much beats Derek in everything here. Once again, Andrew has the bigger and better legs because he has more details, and this in turn once again leads to better upper-lower balance. Derek is more thickly developed up top though, but honestly it's to his detriment. Andrew's waist is actually smaller by the looks of it, and his abs are way more defined. They're a very nice touch. He also has really popping arms and delts and even the more defined chest. And when it comes to the lats, it's actually an easy win there too. Now Derek's lats are great. We'll get to the back poses, but I don't think that needs an explanation. We all know how good his back is. But here they get hidden, or he's not opening up very well, or he's just too narrow. Honestly, it's like a bunch of little things coming together to undermine him here. Andrew's lats are just crazy, and even for him, I think you could probably pose this one a little bit better. Like I said, even though Derek is just mediocre, I still think there's a massive gap in the shot because Andrew is so good at the same time. I'd love to make this just a 2-pointer for Andrew, but unlike the front double, I can't find a single silver lining to make an argument for Derek here. So Andrew will be getting his usual full 3 points. Now we have our first side pose, and this has been one of these guys' weaker shots over the course of their careers, but Derek has definitely done more to improve his. Unfortunately though, he's just so small next to Andrew. Yeah, Andrew looks lanky and awkward with his posing, but it matters a lot less since he's standing next to Derek, who Andrew still towers over even when squatting way down for this pose. Derek is very stout though, very compact. He's more muscular pound for pound. He wins the side leg for one, he has the better quad hand balance and is miles ahead of Andrew in terms of conditioning. Moving up, the midsections really aren't that good on either guy. Derek is puffy and Andrew is pushing his stomach out a lot because he just can't pose. In the upper limb, Derek takes the bi and tri portion because he's fuller, but Andrew takes the delt because he's more capped off. And finally in the chest, pecs to pecs is pretty close. Andrew looks to be more detailed slightly, but Derek seems a little bit fuller overall. But on a real stage that may not hold up because he's giving up so much overall size to Andrew. Derek does still have a solid chest though. He's worked on the details, he actually has some striations to speak of now, and he has good size. Derek does put a enough together here to take the pose. He's winning more body parts, and it's about the thickness from the side, which Andrew still needs to work on. But this will be much closer than Derek would like it to be. The problem for him is that he's just so much smaller. He wins, but only by enough for a single point. Derek can breathe a sigh of relief though, because we're heading to the back shots next. And he is making Andrew tap out here. He's practically begging for mercy after the slaughtering. Honestly, it's even more of a victory than the front lat spread was for Andrew. This could realistically be a 4 or 5 point win for Derek. Andrew is looking like an amateur next to his opponent, especially in the back portion. Andrew's back just looks blank next to Derek's insane level of development and detail. The lower body is also a slam dunk for brother Derek. Andrew has a lot of size, but Derek's conditioning is spanking Andrew's. But I'm sure you guys already knew the outcome of this pose before we even looked at it. The rear lat spread does get closer, but it's still fairly obvious, at least to me. Derek still sweeps the lower half easily. His biggest hangup though was actually quite an important one. Andrew is of course wider than Derek. Derek is still very wide for his height, but Andrew is massive. But Derek does have the more defined back and very thick lats. I still have this pose going to him, but I'm definitely taking a point off here. Honestly, it's even closer to a 1 point win than it is a 3 point win. And on a real stage, maybe Derek looks so small that it's only a 1 point win in real life. I can certainly believe that, and I'll be watching that on show day. Andrew does win the most important thing, the width factor, but Derek is still beating him on every other metric. So I think he does just enough for 2 points, at least right now. Now here's an interesting one. This should be prime real estate for Derek because it's another side pose. But yet again, he is falling short of what he should be doing. But does he do enough to win the side tricep? I mean, I guess so. He still wins the side leg yet again, and in the upper body, he's more thickly developed overall, and Andrew does look lanky here again. But that's kind of okay for this pose. It makes him look more streamlined at least. There really isn't too much difference in that aspect though, because Derek is fairly streamlined himself. What really hurts Derek, however, is the midsection and the pec detail. But Andrew doesn't do much to contrast this. With his poor posing, he really isn't flexing his abs. Doing that alone would have won him the pose. And he's just okay in the pecs. He's more detailed, but he doesn't have the big barrel chest like a Samson Dowda, for instance. And in the tricep, there isn't a whole lot of difference either. Derek looks a little bit thicker, but Andrew's tricep really pops. Overall, I don't like either of them, but I think I have to go with Derek for bringing more substance. Andrew's pose is just so empty, and his posing sucks. Derek is thicker up top, he wins the side leg, and his tricep is right there with Andrew's. Sure, he has a soggy midsection, which I hate, but is Andrew a good alternative? Barely. Andrew is mediocre all around. Derek has his issues concentrated in one area. I could really go with Andrew on a different day. They're both very lackluster here. They need some pretty obvious tweaks, but I'll go with Derek for now for just a 1-pointer. We're back to another obvious pose now, that being the abs and thighs. This is the final shot of Andrew's 3 that he has on lock, and it is his strongest. Sometimes he loses margins on the first 2 front shots, but very often he is getting the full 3 points here in what is his signature pose. Today will not be any different. I don't think I really need to tell you why. Again, some poses are just way too obvious. But I do want to include a disclaimer. For Derek, his 2024 version, especially the abs pose, is bad, but in that 2024 version, he hit it thoroughly in the callouts and in the routine, which means I then begin to count the vacuum towards his score. Back at 2023, when he didn't even hit the abs pose, I did not count the vacuum. If and only if you actually hit the crunched abs variation first, I think it can count. But here, I really don't think I can count it for much. Even though Derek's vacuum does technically still count, I think Andrew runs so far ahead of Derek with his crazy abs and thighs pose that it doesn't account for enough for Derek to even take a single point off. And finally, we have the most muscular. I'm going to be blunt, Derek's height really him here. Or I guess you could be less negative and just say Andrew's height is such an advantage for him. But Andrew is still hindered by his posing somewhat. Anyway, in the legs, this is actually really close now, even though Andrew has won this area in every single front shot so far. Derek looks really big here, but of course Andrew is too, and he has the better details. I would go with him, but the moral of the story here is that it's pretty close. Going up, the midsections are actually pretty mediocre again for both guys. It's poor for Derek for obvious reasons, but you wouldn't expect that from Andrew, but it's the posing. He's not flexing them all the way nor correctly. He can pose this one like the abs and thighs and make his waist look small, the abs look great, and it would make him look even taller with that stance. Instead, he's just kind of passively tensing them. Andrew also kind of falls off from this point on. Between the awkward arm flailing posing and the actual lack of muscle for those insanely long arms, Andrew looks lanky through the upper limbs. Derek may be smooth in the arms and delts, but he's carrying a lot more muscle per square inch. The same goes for the chest. Andrew has good details, but Derek is thicker and has good enough details now if you ask me. And from the overall perspective, perspective, Andrew does tower over Derek, and Andrew carries a surprising amount of good detail in some places, but I still find him somewhat awkward and lanky. Him being that massive next to Derek really pulls a lot of weight in my opinion. Imagine this on a real stage. I'm giving Derek a point though because he's filling out his frame a lot better, doesn't have the awkward posing, and wins his share of body parts. This is eerily close for him though. Derek is just pretty small in this one, so he's only going to get a single point to conclude the mandatories round of judging. Next, we have the second round of judging the overall physique categories. We're taking a look at the following 4 metrics: flaws, conditioning, shape, and muscularity. We're going to go ahead and start with shape. If I don't give Andrew a win in this category, I do fear my own public execution, but honestly it should be closer to a tie than anything. Derek's shape is phenomenal. The balance is a little off because of his legs, sure, but up top he has one of the craziest V-tapers ever. Andrew does have the better balance though, and is very aesthetic too, but in a different kind of way. So of course he has an argument to win this category fair and square, but let's make no mistake about it, Derek is fantastic. And also in my previous Samson versus Andrew comparison, I still gave this category to Andrew with 1 point, much to my chagrin, but since I did it there, I'll do it here too. Let's go to a less controversial one now, conditioning. This is an easy win for Derek. He was by far more conditioned everywhere but the front. Andrew actually has really good details from the front. I think he beats Derek actually, but Derek just kills him from the side and back. It wasn't even close. I think that could warrant a 3-point win, but Andrew is more detailed in certain areas, so it will hold Derek back at just 2 points. Then we have flaws, where I will now attempt the ultimate defense of brother Derek. I do not have Andrew winning this category, as I think his posing is the most detrimental flaw between the two. I'm not saying Derek does not have flaws, but I'm saying Andrew's posing is really distracting and hurt him more and more often than anything Derek has. I think Derek has worked on his flaws enough to just barely be better off than Andrew at this point. I would be fine with a tie here, but I like to live a little dangerously. And finally, that brings us to muscularity. This will actually not be the best margin for Derek. I almost made this a tie too, which is crazy. But he does have the superior thickness, pound for pound muscularity, and better completeness. However, Andrew just makes him look small. That height difference is brutal. That alone made poses like the side shots and most muscular clothes when they really shouldn't have been. Derek does have more of what makes an overall good showing in this category, but Andrew threatens to just blow past him on sheer size and height. So I'll give Derek a 1-point win, but that's it. That concludes this comparison for this matchup, and as I said, it's apples and oranges. But in this case, I decided to go with apples, and by that I mean Derek Lunsford. He won today's comparison with just 57.7 points to Andrew's 42.3 points. Honestly, he may even be closer than that on a real stage, mainly because they are so different. With that being said, some people will look at this comparison and immediately conclude that Andrew should win. He has the better physique after all, I will definitely admit that. But others like me will look at these apples and oranges and still pick the former, because we believe that Derek is the better bodybuilder. My case for Derek is as follows. First off, he won more mandatories. Now he actually did lose to Andrew points wise, but it was 5-3 for Derek in terms of the overall poses. When it's that close, a 1-point decision margin wise, I actually think going with the guy that won more poses overall is the more correct choice to settle that side of things. Derek is also a more well-rounded combo for bodybuilding. He was in much better condition, he was more complete, which led him to winning more poses, and he's more thickly developed, while Andrew looked lanky at times and clearly needs more muscle in more places. For Derek, he really only needs a considerable jump in the quads. Andrew needs some solid improvement to his entire posterior chain really. That's just my argument for Derek. I'm not saying it's the most solid, but it's there for sure. But Andrew has a solid one too. Andrew's argument will require you to kind of upheave a lot of bodybuilding history and precedent, but who's to say that's wrong? Since Dorian Yates, we've been rewarding mass and conditioning first. Maybe it's time that guys like Andrew take up the mantle of these big shows, at least over guys like Derek. It may in fact even be going that way with Samson Dauda currently leading the charge. But anyway, Andrew has incredible wow factor. 3 tremendous lights out poses. He's tall, he's the most aesthetic bodybuilder on the planet right now, but he's not the most well-rounded body for bodybuilding, and definitely not the most developed. Derek's shape is absolutely killer, so Andrew just can't show up and play that card and auto win. In addition to Derek keeping shape close, he was more shredded and developed. That to me is what makes him the narrow winner of this comparison. It's not about the best body, it's about the best developed body. At least that's what I believe now. If the judges are going a different way over the next few years, I'll change my philosophy too. But for now, to me, Derek is better. Now, as for my predictions, I cannot give you a concrete answer at this point in time. To me, Derek wins, but will the judges favor Andrew's type of physique more? I think that's a very fair ask. And Andrew doesn't just have to rely on judges to change their minds on a whim and change the criteria. He can win fair and square. With a little bit better conditioning, a little more muscle and posing, things that could be done very quickly, I think he can win even under under the current standard. It's already very close. And it does not help Derek at all that he'll be the odd man out big time. He's 5'5" max, and he's probably going to be standing in between Andrew and Samson. With that in mind, I think Derek may actually have the lowest chance of placing second than he does third or even first. Think about it. It makes sense that if he beats Andrew or Samson, he could probably beat the other if that's the way it's leaning. But if Samson is beating him, then why wouldn't an on Andrew do the same as well, since Samson and Andrew are already so similar? It's going to be very interesting, and I love when we have variety in the lineup. Maybe the judges will have a trend, and maybe we'll find Derek in first or third, in front or behind both tall aesthetic guys. Or maybe they're going to stagger it like they did at the 2023 Arnold Classic, where Nick Walker was in the middle of the same two guys. I literally could see every single scenario playing out, some more likely than others. But this will be a true test of not only the athletes, but of where our sport is at and where it's going. Well, that's going to do it for today's video. I know my outcome for this comparison will definitely not be the popular choice, but still let me know who you had winning this comparison and who you are predicting to place higher on show day. And if you guys like this video and want to see more, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Of course, don't forget to return to my channel all Arnold Classic weekend long for all of my live coverage. And finally, with all that said, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.
Gotta get that Lexia.